Okay, welcome. I have been on mute this whole time. Oh man, that's classic. That's a classic maneuver. All right, we got to start over, folks. Haha, wow. Uh, Hopefully you guys can hear me now. I'm really sorry, crew. Um, Amateur. That's what the problem is. I'm an amateur. Oh, okay. Look, I value your time, guys, and I appreciate you hopefully seeing the humor in this because I do. All right, let's start this over. Let's do this proper styles here. Okay. First of all, my name is Mr. Muchacho. Welcome to my channel that's now unmuted. Today we're talking about the relationship a person has with the art on Magic cards, along with a lot of the ideas, news, what have you, around the usage of AI art, its role in the evolution of the art industry, how all of that interweaves into the concepts of creativity, and how we as Magic players um, understand the game perceptually, but also mechanically, and how art brings all this together, no matter where it comes from. I'm gonna start off this series using land because I think they're both mechanically simple and the most mechanically simple thing in the game. While also providing a range of art options, so it's a good starting point for us. We're gonna use swamps because I love black; it's my favorite color to play. So we're just gonna use that because I'm spoiled and I'm in charge of the podcast. So let's jump into this, okay? And here's why I'm going to show you why you may not know why you like what you like about magic art, and hopefully I can get you thinking about some ideas, and maybe get you talking to other people about this stuff because I think it's important we talk about it because art is changing. So here we go. Okay, basic swamp. This swamp can be what my notes here are just to help me keep on task here. But what we're looking at here, this swamp can be anywhere. It can be in any place, anytime in the multiverse that is magic lore. But it doesn't itself contain any lore, none that I'm aware of. The artist has done a great picture. The art is beautiful. We can zoom up on it. And I think there's like a little bit of some people going on in the background there. That's kind of cool. But there's no story here. And there's no way that this art is going to get the just desserts it needs on such a small area. This art, hopefully larger, would look great, as a big mural on the wall, right? But at this size, it doesn't matter what we do here. Doesn't matter what we do here. This swamp is disposable to a lot of people, though they may like it, and that's totally fine. But as we talk about the art of this thing here, this is nothing special. And that's not by any fault of the artist. It's just not made to be special. It's just what it is. It's a swamp. But it is branded in the IP of Magic. So the players know by looking at this card what it's for, the game it's played in, and its ultimate purpose, which is to tap the black mana. Now, it could be argued that image could be AI. I don't think it is, but I only say that to show that AI is becoming very indistinguishable from, art, real human being artwork. And I think it's cool to note that some of these art could look very similar to AI art. Now, whether you like this or you don't is purely subjective. You could love this art and be like, "This is my favorite swamp ever." I'm putting 200 of them in all my decks, and away you go. And more power to you, man. Run that tree swamp. But objectively, this card only accomplishes what it's supposed to do, and the art is not predicated on its function within the game. And I would suspect few players would look at this as an aesthetic choice if they're going to fill their deck with a certain swamp, with one swamp, let's say. But having said that, this just means that the role of the art in this card is not what it is not important to the play of the card. That's like a very important distinction here, and it's kind of tying it all together. Okay, so the question ultimately is, would you use this? And of course you would. Of course you would. It's a swamp. It does what it's supposed to do. You would never not choose this swamp unless you specifically chose a different mundane swamp to replace it, because it's just the land. So of course you would use it. But again, noting the art does not matter with this card. There could be no art. And we'll get to that a little bit later. Okay? So there are different kinds of cards when it comes to these things. I mean, there's special art cards, okay? This is a secret layer card. That's just a swamp, okay? An artist land, okay? They're a specific artistic style. That's very much from that artist. It's their signature in a way. It's what they're known for in their illustration circles within their industry, within the various products and different work that they do, are all reminiscent most likely of this style. I don't know much about this artist, but I think that it's quirky enough to warrant investigation at some point, right? I mean, let's look at that here. Okay, it's quirky, it's weird, it's got some style. You can't tell if it's quite all digital or if it's traditional artwork. But again, I don't think that matters. I think it's what matters here is the relationship you have with that art as you look at it. Is this like I want to have 30 of these in my deck? You're going to go drop $400 on this secret layer swamp? More power to you, you know? C'est la vie. But I think you can appreciate it without having to fill your deck with them. So there's like a disconnect between your relationship with the card and the art and your need to run it in your decks, which means you would never really want to own or attempt to own more than one of these at a time. That's important to note. So this becomes a showpiece. This becomes something you're looking at in a binder or in a specific deck. I don't think you'd have more than one of these. That doesn't diminish it. I think it's beautiful. This art's kind of weird and quirky, and I like it. This card, regardless of its mechanical function, is a subjective, artistic relationship because you either appreciate artwork in general, this specific artist and their work, or the card as an art piece that you would showcase otherwise. Now, again, that's important to note. You would probably only like this if you like the art. Whereas the swamp, you are going to need that regardless of the art because it's a basic land. It's cheap, it's plentiful. You've probably got one in one of your decks right now. That's important to understand, is that this one at the top will get more use than this one below. So it'll see more play, it'll see more eyes, and more people will see that artwork than will see this one over the course of the life of the game and that card. Important to know. Okay, so I want to continue this with more artist lands because I think it's a very powerful subject we're on here. Okay. So another artist land is by Gary Baseman. Okay. Again, this could be anywhere. There's no lore here. Your relationship to this card is not dependent on the lore. It's because you love this art, and you should. This is great art, and I'd recommend that if anybody likes art, that they check out these kinds of cards because they're awesome. They're beautiful. Look at that. It's fun. It's quirky. Of course, I want 50 of these in my fucking deck. It's awesome. Of course you do. The key here, though, is that this is a specific choice based on the fact that I like this artist. And so my relationship with this piece of cardboard is at that level is predicated solely on the art, the artists themselves, because I know their art, I respect them, whatever. I mean, I don't have that many, but I would love to run that many. I believe I do have one of these, but regardless, you know, uh, it's branded, which means it has all the normal IP stuff on it, which makes this immediately a product of Wizards of the Coast, showcasing an artist that you like. And that's different than this one up here, because this one here is not branded except for the tiny skull in the middle top, up in here, up in under the italic swamp there, um, right up here. So the idea here is that this one here doesn't actually have branded IP on it. It's not covered in mana symbols. It's not covered in the typical framing. It's itself a piece of art outside of the concept of what it's being used because it's not holding the brand elements. Whereas this one here by Gary Baseman, excuse me, it does have the various IP on it. The secret layer star symbol, the way that the typeface used for swamp, the framing, the mana symbol, etc., etc. Even got the, yeah, it's got the foil just like the other one does. My point here is that the relationship's different. I like this artist. It's a quirky design. I love quirky stuff. The quirkier the better, in my opinion. That's where the fun zone is. but it's purely subjective. Somebody could hate this card and be like, this is the terrible, I don't like this style. And awesome. I mean, that's what we need is that kind of subjectivity. And this is like ties it all together. Art is extremely subject, it's entirely subjective, except for its objective utility, in the case of Magic being the mechanics that are used. Okay? So the question is, would you use this? And of course you would use this, unless you specifically didn't like the artist. And so your relationship to this card is everything about the art. Otherwise, you're going to go use a basic swamp again because you don't care. You don't want to invest in all those special cards. You don't want to put a lot of money down for 30 of them. And I get that. It makes sense. You're not going to want to do that. Okay? So think about that. Think about the ideas behind this that I'm talking about, not these specific artists. These specific artists are great and I wish them the best. I'll buy their stuff. I'm talking about the ideas behind this art and our relationship with art and how we perceive it as people in a game that we all together love to play and look at the art. Okay? Let's continue on. Thank you for tuning in so far. My name is Mr. Muchacho. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I think you guys are going to really love this video and make a small man grow. I love this kind of stuff. Okay, so we're going to go to the next kind of swamp here. Now, these are beautiful, and I think anybody who's seen them, anybody in the chat who wants to say so, these are some of the most beautiful swamps in the game. I've got quite a collection of the foil ones for a deck, and I think that they are hands down the most beautiful swamp ever made. But again, subjective. That's just my opinion. But they are objectively really well made, and they do look nice. Themes aside, okay, just put the themes aside for a second. Just the beauty and the cosmic nature of that image are profound. It holds the imagination in such a way that you're like, what is going on deep in that space? How did we get there? And again, this is the relationship with the art. Otherwise, it's just a swamp. It's mechanically, the only thing it does is make a black mana. That's important to note because, again, the relationship I have with this card is predicated entirely on its art substance. Otherwise, what would I do? I would go and I would use this swamp here because why am I going to go spend $10 on one of those cosmic badass swamps when I can go spend 8 cents on one of these? Right? So this is where art is vital to a game and how it draws a player in and how it makes them want to play more and how it makes them want to explore the card. Art is paramount. But do you honestly believe the source of that art is important? We're going to explore that as we continue here. All right. So let's talk more about this one here. These are from the Infinity sets, so they're very beautiful. Anybody watching this will know what I'm talking about here. Okay, so regardless of how awesome this art is, it still could be anywhere. There's no lore here that I'm aware of. It's just some planetoids floating in black space. It's all very ominous. It's awesome. I love it. It's very Stellaris, actually. So the art is beautiful, so is the design. I think the cropping, the framing is all there. And it contains very minimal amount of IP. The word swamp, top middle of the card, is in that Balerian typeface that they had made for the game. That's the only real recognizable IP. I could say the egg foil at the bottom there, the ovoid foil mark is kind of there, but the swamp really is the only outstanding IP on it. And I think that that's beautiful. Look how simple that card is. Look how together it is, and it really does what it's supposed to do. But regardless, it still only mechanically makes a swamp. So this card is only endearing to me because of its beauty, not because of its function. Great, I get to use it functionally. But I'm only using this many of the card because the art is badass and it's just great to look at. But here's the trick. This could be argued as AI. By today's AI standards, there's every way we could generate an image just like this with very little effort, actually. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but let's stick with where we are. So one thing that's thematically or lore-based is I don't believe there's a lot of space themes within Magic. And if that's true, this was a kind of an off-brand theme in Cosmic or Planetoids. So the whole thing here is like, again, my relationship with this card is based on the art. Let's keep this going here. All right, we're going to look at one of these very rarely used cards anymore. This is the art cards. Now, a lot of the art cards are, this one here I think is an actual swamp, I think. Now imagine if we could repurpose these as lands. Then we can revive a product while still appreciating the art that's sitting on these cards somewhere. I would love to run these just as swamps without having to get in trouble for using proxies or without having to be in trouble for having to use fake cards. It shouldn't matter, especially if it's only mechanically simple, like creating a swamp. I should be able to run 24 of these in a deck if I so choose. If I say that they're all swamps, what's the difference? They're scaled the same, they're made by the same company. The only thing they lack is legitimacy within the game to be used as a swamp. I can't say anybody seeing 24 of these in my deck, me saying they're all swamps, even before the game. Say, hey, I've got 24 of these in the deck, they're all swamps. What's the difference? What's the real difference? Because the difference can't be too profound. Okay, the difference can't be too profound. And I'm going to show you why here. Okay, we're going to go back to this other art card here. All right, look at this card. It has almost nothing worth of IP on it. Almost no IP, except for that black mana symbol in the top middle of the card. Whereas the card we're looking at right now doesn't even have that. It only has the Wizards of the Coast magic icon there, the flame crown or whatever it is. I can't remember what that's supposed to be. But anyway, does that mean we shouldn't be able to use that as a swamp? That we shouldn't be able to rock this as a swamp? Think about that for a second. If I'm showing you the other stuff here and you've accepted those other things as swamps, why can't we accept this as a swamp? So then the question stands. Would you use this? Would you use this card? And I bet you some of you would say yes. I know that I would. All right, so the big question here is that what we've been able to do here is establish a few things. All right. Is that functionally speaking, all of these do the same thing. They create a black mana, okay? Of course, this art card here doesn't. It's not an actual game thing. But that's not my point. In fact, it kind of adds to it. All of these do the same thing mechanically. It's the relationship with the art that most matters subjectively. Because objectively, they just create black mana. So it doesn't really matter. It's up to you to decide whether you like the art or not, or whether you want to go with something more basic, you want to embellish and get foils. All of that's just an aesthetic. At the end of the day, you're tapping for a single black mana. The rest is just you showing off that you love this card and wanting people to be jealous of it. And I think that's awesome. I run slicked out decks too, so I can make people feel jealous. I agree. Now we're all human. Can we get on with it? Okay, so let's keep all this in mind. Keep all of this in mind as you continue through this video, because you're going to realize quite quickly your relationship with art isn't exactly what you think it is. Okay, let's go on to the next part here. Let's go on to the next part. Let's zoom out a bit here. Bear with me. I'm still new to this. I'm an old guy who's an amateur. Okay, let's get into some iconic design. Okay, would you say by any standard that that's a swamp? Right? That would tap for a black mana. It's a swamp. It has the swamp icon. It has the minimal amount of IP on it, minus the credits that would have to be put on there, what have you. But it has the bare minimum that's required to show that this is an IP product from Wizards of the Coast. And it's no different than that fancy art card that only had a single mana symbol. Because the only thing that it lacks is a very specific art style on it. So this could be run as a swamp. And I think that if you had 24 of these in your deck, and you showed your opponent that you had 24 of these, they were made, let's say, on a proxy card, so they resembled the sturdiness and quality you'd expect in a card. You run 24 of these. Right. You have 24 swamps. You're just tapping for black mana. So then what's the difference? Does the art matter? And in this case, pure utility, absolutely not. This is a CDH Beauty card, pure utility. Pure utility. CDH is essentially pure utility, or as utilities you can get for a format. I think we would agree. Okay. This is that boiled down. It's a land boiled down and reduced to its core concepts. A black mana. We in the game know what this means. So if my opponent puts this on the table, I absolutely know without even having to ask. They don't got to say anything. I don't even got to ask. I just got to be in awe of the simple blackback skull swamp that this bastard just played on the board. Of the 12 that he's probably got down already. It looks badass. And I think that would be badass. It's very design, actually. It's very like chic design. Make sure you like and sub. Mr. Muchacho talks about magic. So let's explore this a bit more here. Let's explore this. Okay. Okay, this is iconic, hyper reduced design style. Okay. So what that means is that there's nothing that can be removed from this card, although you might be surprised. But generally speaking, nothing can be removed from this card to make it any simpler. I mean, some could argue, but without having to change the actual IP, there's very little we could do here, I think. Maybe. This is very symbolic. This is purely like, you can see this from across the table that this produces mana. So purely game terms or in like day-to-day gameplay, everyone's going to know what this does. And so it's a home run. It immediately accomplishes what it's supposed to accomplish. And that's banger. That's awesome. That's how it rolls. Someone in the chat's catching on. Okay? It's easy to see. It's easy to know. So, could we go even further with this, right? Could we go even further? I think we could. Okay? So here we go. I want you to look at this. This is a type of further reduction shown in two different solutions. All of the cards above, the ones in white, are mana producing lands. Anybody who would see them on the table would say that they are. If you had 24 of these in your deck, that would look pretty badass, I think, especially if they were quality made proxies. And I think that that would be awesome to see someone run them. But you could never use them in like a sanctioned play. I'm not sure I agree with that. Anyhow, let's look at this further. We can actually reduce them in a separate way using just the color, right? And to answer the chat, yes, I do have those hex codes. And that's a great idea. You know what? So we're going to dig into that. We're going to dig into that, folks. Watch this. Okay, here we go. Here we go. There we go. Yeah, we'll get that other format. But my point is, look at this. You know what they do. Your opponents know what they do. They are, by all extents and purposes, a mana producing mechanic in the game. They're just not sanctioned. But oddly enough, the more simple you go, you actually begin to have a relationship with the art as well. In this case, just pure design. This is pure design at its finest. And because of its difference, as opposed to elaborate artistic expression, you have a different kind of relationship. It's almost seen as like a collection of similar designs. There's an aesthetically pleasing pattern there. And I think that that's important to note about our relationship with art and what it means when you have relationship with art and what that art stands for. Not necessarily its source, but what it stands for. And we'll get into more of that as we go here. So we're going to stick to the black mana, okay, for a second here. And we're going to open up the next part here of the journey we're on, okay? Hyper reduce, no other elements can be removed, okay? Someone in the chat mentioned this. So here we have just a black mana, which is similar to the the gray background actually that's behind the skull in the mana symbol, same color. But then it's just a pure black card. Now that honestly, I think arguably would look pretty badass having 24 just straight black cards, especially if they were painted with that no reflection black, whatever it is. That would be badass, real badass. I actually might do that now. Hell yeah. Anyhow, I digress. That's a really good idea. Anyhow, the relationship with that card is interesting because you're not in relationship with the art, you're in relationship with the idea of 24 fully black cards in the deck. So from a deck perspective, it has this alluring aesthetic to it that all your lands are these solid black cards. And I think that that's a really interesting idea unto itself, is that you're in relationship with the design as it is in relationship to the rest of your deck and how that's being perceived. Okay. My name is Mr. Muchacho. You should like and sub. Help me grow the channel. Okay, we're going to look at the next component here. This is where we're going to get really interesting. This is where we're going to talk about AI art specifically, okay, guys? So whether you like AI or you don't like AI, do not have a battleground in my comments, please. I'm not interested in your drama. But I'm going to talk about the ideas of AI art and its real long-term impact on art. And just for the record, AI is not going anywhere. So you guys better settle in and get used to it. It's just a matter of how we adapt. You know who survives? Those who can adapt. All right. So let's talk about AI art for a second here, okay? This is very important. And, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of people upset about this, but whatever. It is what it is. It is what it is. Okay, let me just get set up here. Okay. So this image on the left here, this green swamp. Okay. Now, this is an AI image. Okay. Minus that. That is an AI image. I generated that image quite simply with a very simple prompt. I was able to generate that image and then just simply crop it to the size I needed. By any standard, this image represents a swamp, similar to any of the other swamps that we looked at tonight. It would, in a card with 24 identical ones, or expressed to the opponent, this is a swamp, would be used as one without issue. It does not break the game, doesn't upset the game, doesn't change the rules, has zero impact on the game. It's purely an aesthetic idea. That's important to note, because regardless of what it looks like, if we agree this is a swamp and we play by it, I guess it's a swamp, isn't it? The reason I had that fake logo on there was I wanted to show how a simple brand element can change your perspective of a card, can change your perspective of an idea. By simply putting that logo and that word swamp, I have in some ways given it a layer of branding. Now, that branding might not be important intrinsically, but it's everything about giving legitimacy to the image, and it changes your relationship with it. Suddenly, this image it must have some meaning. Somebody created a logo and they put it on there. It has a degree of production to it, as opposed to without it. Without the logo, this is kind of what you have. It's just this image with no context unless we know that it's being used as a swamp, okay? Okay, so this is AI generated, as you know. I've already said that. Okay, it's nothing special. Meets the exact same standards as a basic land. It can be anywhere. It doesn't matter where this is, right? This is just a swamp somewhere in the multiverse where some poor schmuck fell in there and he'll never be found, okay? That's where it is, middle of nowhere. There's nothing special. There's no story here. There's no creatures, characters. There isn't even a hand sticking out of the swamp to give us an idea that some poor schmuck wandered in here one night drunk out of his tits and just ended up in the swamp. Okay, we don't see any of that. It's not branded, right? Unless it is, in which case, look, it's branded now. And it immediately changes your perspective of how what that means or could mean to you. Suddenly, this has a value because you like this brand or whatever that this logo would match. And by the way, I pulled that randomly off the net, so I don't know whose it is. I just thought it kind of looked cool. Anyhow, but unless I told you this was AI, you could guess that it was a hand painted drawing because it's not that spectacular. It's not that outlandish. It doesn't have any degrees of inherent complexity to it that I haven't seen some of the best artists long overshadow. Okay. So does the icon matter? Does it have more value to you with that on there than it doesn't? These are real questions you need to ask yourself because art's changing. AI is coming in more and more, and people are going to be start branding AI art. It's not going anywhere. It doesn't matter what we want. It's a matter of solutions for creativity is what it really comes down to. And at the end of the day, people will use it because it works. Okay? Let's keep that in mind. Okay. So when making this art, okay, I needed a very simple prompt. Okay? I'm going to show you the prompt right now. Okay? There's the prompt. Okay? A swampy fantasy landscape, fetid and inhospitable. Murky green and purple mists, evocative illustration art style, warped tree trunks, fallen over. That was it. That was the entirety of the prompt, unchanged. And I chose one of the four images that came up. I didn't doctor it, I haven't altered it, and that's what was made. Off of a few minutes of input, using some vocabulary there, and that's what would output. And it's a swamp. And if somebody had 24 of these decked, I wouldn't be able to say that it wasn't AI or it was. Because the use case doesn't matter. It just mechanically does the same thing. It taps for a black mana. That's all it does. That's all it can do. And that's really important to remember because your relationship with this card, is it dependent on the art or is it dependent on the mechanic? Is it dependent on both? There's no wrong or right answer. It's about your relationship to it and helping us talk about AI's role in changing and augmenting art, okay? Especially within the game that we all love, okay? Now, let's just say Wizards had done this, okay? Let's say Wizards had done this, okay? So let's take a look at that. If somebody had made this land here that has the icons on it, okay, and tried to pass it off as using it, this would be a counterfeit. This would be a counterfeit card now. It would no longer be just a proxy. This would be counterfeit. And the reason that this would be counterfeit is quite simple, okay? It's quite simple. We're using IP here, such as the black mana symbol, regardless of how translucent I made it, and the secret layer star in the bottom right corner, okay? Because those logos, those icons, lend legitimacy via its IP to the image to which they are overlaid on, positioning that image within a hierarchy of the cards they've already manufactured, putting it into a pseudo market, essentially. But I think what's important to remember here is that this is when a thing becomes counterfeit using AI, is a person's trying to fool you, okay, into thinking it's something it's not, okay? We just have to look at the definition of counterfeit here. Made an exact imitation of something valuable or important with the intention of deceiving or defraud. A fraudulent imitation of something else, a forgery. Imitate fraudulently. That's the other thing. I think that last one covers intent for sure, specifically. Okay, so those are owned icons. Magic or Wizards of the Coast, whoever owns those IP icons, okay? So if somebody wants to use AI art, I'm all for it. But this is where we draw the line. This is where you need to park yourself if you're going to use AI art, and do not use other people's IP specifically on it or present your AI art as anything other than AI art. It's deceptive, it's unethical, and honestly, it means that you're not that creative. If you're a creative type, you'll know what that means. All right, let's go to the next one here. Remember, my name is Mr. Muchacho. Please like and sub. Helps my channel grow and makes the small guys start to do something. All right, let's look at our summary for this big merry-go-round of ideas here. Okay. In this case, we're talking about lands tonight. So what was it used for? All of these lands. Every single land that we looked at tonight. Regardless of whether it's a proxy, whether it was a playtest card I made for this particular stream, whether it's images of the ones we like or we don't like, an art card, doesn't matter. They're all used for one particular thing, and that's tapping for a black mana. Let's never forget that. And that as players, we have to have lands in our decks. Of course we do. So what does it matter where the art comes from or what they look like? If they mechanically do it and you subjectively like the art, the rest is somebody else's preference. Keep that in mind, folks. Okay. So let's do a bit of a summary on this this concept here. Whatever your opinion of AI art is, ask yourself, what exactly are you saying and fighting for? Are you advocating for AI art? Then you need to express that in a way that is logical and reasonable. If you do not like AI art, you are also obligated to be reasonable and to talk about this because we are in the middle of a big change on art. The art industry, art as we use it, has all changed. And our favorite game is going to be affected by AI art, and it will never. It's inevitable. So it's up to us to figure out what we're going to appreciate and how we're going to appreciate it, and to start to understand our individual relationships with those art and how that's going to change over time. Okay, be reasonable. Let's talk. We can come to common ground, right? We both play the same game. There's no reason we need to fight over the art. And honestly, is the source of the art that important to you? Is it a hill you're going to die on? Are you going to wake up every day and be torch in hand fighting for artists? Or are you going to let the world do what the world does and figure itself out? Very important that you ask yourself your relationship with the art within the game. Because it will not be too long when AI makes its way into the game. It's that simple. It's time to grow up. At what point is your enjoyment dependent on that source? And by source, it means where the art is coming from. Out of the cards we looked at tonight, one of them was AI. Wasn't terrible. Wasn't the best, but it wasn't terrible. And it had as much legitimacy as the other cards because they all just tap for black mana. I don't advocate you go out and proxy your whole deck. You got to buy into the game to keep the game going. I appreciate that. I appreciate Wizards of the Coast as a business. But I also appreciate that there are larger things at play that aren't just Wizards of the Coast business. And art is changing this game. For better or for worse is for us to decide as it happens. So if you watch this whole stream, thank you. My name is Mr. Muchacho. We've been talking about AI art, our relationship with that art, and relationship with Magic the Gathering as a whole. If you haven't liked or subscribed, please do so. Please do so. Helps the channel. And until next time,